LA Knight is currently one of the most over talents in WWE. The last year or two have been some of his best years as a professional wrestler, but today we will look towards the future as we attempt to book the next 5 years of LA Knight's WWE career. Starting out with the 2024 Royal Rumble, Knight would enter a fatal 4-way match against Roman Reigns, Randy Orton and AJ Styles, which would have the Universal Championship on the line. Despite the efforts of the challengers, ultimately Roman Reigns would once again display why he is the tribal chief, as he would win the match and successfully retain his title. Following the Rumble, Knight would begin to feud with Grayson Waller. After some back and forth promos on SmackDown, General Manager Nick Aldis would book a match between LA Knight and Grayson Waller at the upcoming Elimination Chamber PLE. At Elimination Chamber, LA Knight and Grayson Waller would have a match on Grayson's home turf of Australia. To Grayson's surprise, the crowd would be behind LA Knight and not the hometown boy. Knight would pin Grayson in a competitive yet comfortable victory, giving him some much needed momentum heading into WrestleMania. Following the Chamber and leading into WrestleMania, Knight would move on to a program with Logan Paul over the US Championship. During the build-up to their WrestleMania match, their feud would get personal, with Logan stating that he has become a champion in WWE barely even 2 years after his debut, whilst it's taken LA Knight nearly 20 years since his pro wrestling debut to still not be a champion in WWE. At WrestleMania 40, the two would have a well-received match by fans. A fairly back-and-forth contest between the two would kick off Night 1 of WrestleMania. Knight would ultimately win his first match at WrestleMania and his first championship in the WWE. Following WrestleMania, Knight would spend the next few months defending his US Championship on SmackDown. A few weeks before SummerSlam, a tournament would be held to determine the #1 contender for LA Knight's US title. Logan Paul would defy the odds by winning the tournament, confirming his match for the title at SummerSlam. At SummerSlam, LA Knight would defend the US title against Logan Paul. Knight would successfully retain the title after hitting a BFT for the win. For the remainder of the year, Knight would successfully defend his US Championship against the likes of Austin Theory, Cameron Grimes and AJ Styles. Heading into 2025, LA Knight would enter the Royal Rumble match. Knight would enter at number 4 and would progress all the way to the final 3 in the match, alongside his nemesis AJ Styles and the ring general Gunther. Knight would eliminate Styles, but despite his efforts, Gunther would eliminate Knight to win the Rumble match. Leading into WrestleMania 41, LA Knight would begin a feud with the Lone Wolf AJ Styles, the current #1 contender to Knight's US Championship, and the man who Knight eliminated from the Royal Rumble. Knight would successfully defend the title against Styles at WrestleMania, but would proceed to drop the belt the following month at Extreme Rules. Following Extreme Rules, Knight would be moved to the Raw brand in the annual WWE draft. He would immediately be inserted into the main event scene, emerging as a challenger to Drew McIntyre's World Heavyweight Championship. At SummerSlam, Knight would challenge Drew for the world title, but would be unsuccessful due to an interference from Tyler Bate, who had recently aligned with McIntyre on Raw. Following SummerSlam, Drew McIntyre would introduce Pete Dunne, who would join Tyler Bate as members of McIntyre's new faction, the United Empire. Heading into 2026, Knight would continue his feud with Drew McIntyre over the World Heavyweight Championship. After failing to win the Rumble yet again, Drew would set a gauntlet for Knight to earn an opportunity for the world title at WrestleMania. Knight would go on to face Pete Dunne, Tyler Bate and Ridge Holland in 3 consecutive matches to earn his opportunity for gold at WrestleMania 42. Defying the odds, Knight would win the gauntlet, defeating all 3 members of the United Empire and confirming his match at WrestleMania against Drew McIntyre. His match at Mania would be Knight's biggest test of his career. Drew would start the match strong. He would land a Claymore to Knight at ringside before hitting a pile driver through the announce table. Back in the ring, Knight would regain some momentum, landing a BFT. Drew would regain control once again, landing a Claymore in the ring, but Knight would kick out at 2 and the match would continue. McIntyre would once again try a Claymore, but Knight would dodge before landing a BFT, pinning Drew and winning the match to become the new WWE World Heavyweight Champion, closing out Night 1 of WrestleMania. For the remainder of the year, LA Knight would defend his World Heavyweight Championship against Drew and members of the United Empire. He would deal with the group until Hell in a Cell, in which Adam Pearce announced that if Knight could retain his title, then the Empire must leave Raw. At Hell in a Cell, LA Knight and Drew McIntyre would go to war. After a brutal match in the confines of the cell, Knight would walk out victorious, therefore retaining his world title and banishing the United Empire to SmackDown. At the 2027 Royal Rumble, Seth freaking Rollins would outlast 29 other men, winning the Royal Rumble match. He would set his sights on LA Knight's World Heavyweight Championship, the title that he lost to CM Punk 3 years prior at WrestleMania 40. Throughout the next few months, Knight and Rollins would embark on a personal feud for the world title. The rivalry would get so heated, General Manager of Raw Adam Pearce would force the two to team up in the Raw Tag Team Title Tournament, in an effort to create temporary peace between the two before WrestleMania. Knight and Rollins would do the unthinkable by winning the tournament and the Raw Tag Team titles. Following the tournament, despite their dislike for each other, the two would defend the tag team belts. A few weeks before WrestleMania, Knight and Rollins would defend the titles against Axiom and Rey Mysterio. After some miscommunication, tensions between Knight and Rollins would escalate. Despite a resilient effort, Knight would lose the now 2-on-1 handicap match and the tag team titles. WrestleMania 43 would arrive, and the match between LA Knight and Seth Rollins for the world title would headline Night 1 of WrestleMania. The two would have a 30-minute match, with both men hitting signature moves that led to several near falls. Seth would attempt a Phoenix Splash, but Knight would roll out of the way to avoid impact, before hitting a BFT, winning the match and retaining the world title. Heading into SummerSlam, Knight would be without a challenger to his World Heavyweight Championship. Knight would offer an open challenge to anyone in the back to face him at SummerSlam. To the shock of LA Knight, and to the surprise of the WWE Universe, John Cena would return, answering Knight's challenge to a match for the world title. Cena and Knight would have nothing but respect for each other leading into SummerSlam. However, their interactions would occasionally get heated, with Knight saying Cena is well past his prime, and Cena replying by saying that's true, but when he was in his prime, LA Knight was still wrestling in bingo halls. At SummerSlam, Cena would challenge LA Knight for the world title, in what is most likely Cena's final chance to win championship gold in the WWE. Despite turning 50, John would surprise the WWE Universe with his power. With "You've Still Got It" chants echoing throughout the arena, Cena would hit an attitude adjustment, but Knight would kick out at 2.5. Despite a valiant effort, Knight would hit the BFT to win the match and to spoil Cena's plans to win his final championship in WWE. For the remainder of the year, Knight would defend his title on the Raw brand against the likes of Solo Sikoa, Kevin Owens and Austin Theory. Rumours would begin to circulate regarding the status of free agent MJF, whose 4-year contract with AEW has just ended. MJF would debut at the Royal Rumble, entering at number 30. He would eliminate Cody Rhodes to win the match, confirming his place in the main event of WrestleMania. Following the Rumble, MJF would choose to face LA Knight in what you could say is a dream match. The promo battles between the two would be some of the best in the modern era. At WrestleMania 44, LA Knight and MJF would square off for the World Heavyweight Championship. The match would headline Night 2 of WrestleMania. MJF would control the first few minutes of the match, but it wouldn't take long for the champion to respond, hitting a BFT, but MJF would kick out at 2. MJF would pull off a springboard cutter to the outside, but Knight would respond again by hitting a BFT to MJF through the announce table. Back in the ring, Knight would attempt a BFT, but MJF would reverse it into the salt of the earth. Knight would almost escape, but MJF would apply more pressure, which would be too much for the champion as he taps out. MJF would win the World Heavyweight Championship. Following WrestleMania, Knight would take 2 months off after sustaining an injury to his elbow as a result of MJF's Salt of the Earth armbar. He would return at Money in the Bank, arriving as a mystery participant in the men's Money in the Bank ladder match. Knight would win the briefcase and guarantee himself an opportunity at redemption. Knight would spend the rest of the year watching MJF from a distance, with his Money in the Bank briefcase in hand. Heading into 2029, the question on every fan's mind is when will LA Knight cash in the Money in the Bank briefcase? And will he recapture the world title from the man who beat him for it?